Alright, so this right here is going to be a long video, by the way. I just want to point that out from the start. It's a video by Theory-wise. He's made a lot of good content in the past on very different games. Like, he's gone from WoW to old school RuneScape, I believe. And, yeah. Blizzard is missing the point of Classic Plus. Let's see what he has to say.
In my first video about Classic Plus, I claimed that Blizzard doesn't know what Classic Plus even is, what it'll look like when they eventually release it. Today, I want to make a different claim.
Okay.
I don't think Blizzard understands Classic WoW, not Classic Plus, the original one, what made it great, why people still eagerly play and replay it whenever it re-releases. They don't understand what people enjoy about the class design, the class fantasy, the long, tedious leveling experience that sends you across the world just to complete a couple quests, the friction of world buffs and the communal experience of everyone rushing over to Stranglethorn to get there.
Oh no, did he say communal experience, by the way? I think we've had way too much communal experience in TBC Anniversary. Everyone buying the level 58 boost, everyone going for the communal gear, communal experience, baby.
They don't understand the emergent mechanics of Dire Maul tribute runs or Hand of Justice farming, nor are they eager to replicate them. Blizzard is not understanding classic, vanilla. They're applying their modern retail knowledge to a game that doesn't require it. And while they may not understand it now, they could, eventually. That's where we, the players, come in. It's not uncommon, after all, for a studio to struggle with self-reflection, especially one as large and unagile as Blizzard. Waiting years for small changes and adjustments is a commonplace occurrence, and as we've seen with the current release cycles for both, or all 4, versions of WoW, Blizzard has become somewhat complacent. Maybe
all 4 versions of WoW. What would this mean? We have retail, classic progression, anniversary, and classic era, I guess. Classic hardcore, though. Does Classic Hardcore go under Classic Era now? It probably does, right? And then Season of Discovery. Bro, we just have way too many versions, man, of WoW at the moment.
Maybe even afraid of doing something different, risking it, innovating, and as strange as it may seem, they need to innovate with Classic Plus. It can't just be new raids, new dungeons, and some new quests and classes. That's not Classic Plus, because it doesn't expand on the features that are the best part of Classic. It's just retail WoW.
Bro, I've heard so many different claims, by the way, on Classic Plus, and I feel like it's because if you ask a lot of different people, everyone's gonna have their version of Classic Plus, right? You have a bunch of Classic purists who still want Classic Plus, but their version of Classic Plus is basically Classic WoW with a dual spec. In which case, Anniversary to them is Classic Plus. And then you have some people, when you ask them about Classic Plus, they unironically want to have Classic Plus with a dungeon finder system that teleports you to the dungeon. A lot of people want that. And when I say a lot of people, it's probably 20%, by the way, but that's still way more than it should be. And when you ask somebody else, they want to have flying in Classic WoW. When you ask somebody else, they want professions to have more depth to them. When you ask somebody else, they want to have a level boost in Classic WoW. When you ask somebody, they want to have GDKPs in Classic WoW. Other people don't. So many different takes on Classic Plus. And the problem for Blizzard here is they have to take in all of this feedback and synthesize a correct answer to the feedback. And no matter what they do, they're gonna piss somebody off. It's all about it's all about pissing off the least amount of people possible, and for Blizzard as well to make the most amount of money that they can make. That's basically what it's about.
With extra steps. Clearly, there's something about Classic that attracts people in a different way to the retail modern version, and it's not just nostalgia. I have spent many videos waxing poetic about what that may be and how I am concerned with the impending future for Classic Plus, an expanded version of the original release that will see new content be added that doesn't strictly follow the timeline systems and the cadence of the modern game. My concerns are mainly due to the fact that Blizzard has yet to showcase a firm understanding of why this 2004 or 2006 version of the game saw more traction and took the figurative spotlight away from their seasonal main game back in 2019. That's not to say Classic today is more popular, not even close, but it is fair to say that more people are paying attention to Classic even if they aren't replaying the same expansion for a third time. While I am somewhat negative, or at least worried with the state of affairs, I am confident that with enough consideration, the player base can rally together and make them understand. This requires patience, forethought, and a lot of goodwill. After all, as many old-school RuneScape players saw last year, many a WoW player visited the scenic, quaint world of Gielinor, explored its horizons, learned its intricate systems, and arguably got inspired by its continued growing success. Me, on the other hand, well, my 2-year experience with old-school RuneScape has only made me more fearful for the future of Classic. The systems that make old-school RuneScape the best MMO, maybe ever, are all the systems that WoW players seemingly hate. Long grinds, demanding skilling, professions, interconnected and cross-pollinated mechanics that push players to play, not just for
I think, okay, this depends on who he's talking to, because the retail audience, I agree. I think a lot of those people don't want to have the longest grinds possible. But if he's talking to the classic audience, I think a lot of the classic audience, they want to have long grinds. I mean, we can see that right now. People absolutely love grinding, and there's a reason why Classic WoW took off. There's a reason why, for example, TBC as well took off. The grind in TBC is insane. You need a Revered with every reputation to do the heroic dungeons. It's just a lot of stuff you actually have to do in TBC. It's a long grind before you get to the non-grindy part, if that makes sense.
the weekend, not just for a month, but for years and years. RuneScape is a life game, not a weekend detour, not a season, and it's one of the last MMOs that still captures the essence of what makes this genre special. An MMO only succeeds when enough people play it persistently. If the world feels empty in the midst of each individual patch cycle, then less people are likely to join. That's why seasonal MMOs, or at least theme park ones, are so often privy to huge spikes and then large dips in their player count. That's why they require consistent, large updates that the players chew through rapidly. Without them,
I think retail does really well here, by the way. If anybody in chat right now hasn't played retail, the way retail does it, for example, is they have pretty decent sized updates every 2 months in retail, which I think is great to the way that WoW players currently consume content. We can see this in TBC as well, the way a lot of people consume content now. It's all about efficiency. You're min-maxing, being efficient, and what that leads to is you are more rapidly at the point where you are just raid logging. You log in, do the raids, log out. People right now chew through content way faster than ever before, and the retail team has realized this, which is why we have content patches every 2 months now. Now sure, the 0.5 patches are usually just small things, same with the 0.7s, but they're there to keep you engaged for a week or two, and then you have some more content to add to your daily routine, right? It's all about just giving you some content here, some content there.
the world becomes empty, hollow, and sadly, very retail. Developers are reflections of a community.
This right here, by the way, if anybody ever asks me why I play both retail and classic, to me, they are very good, both of them, for very different reasons. I, for example, love the depth we have to professions in retail, where we have knowledge points, you can grind daily and weekly profession points in them, and you can specialize into different things in every profession, by the way, based on those points. It's basically talent points, but for professions, which is lovely. I also love the raids in retail, I love the dungeons in retail, I love M+ in retail, I love delves in retail, but the world and questing and the open open world feels really hollow. It's like a single player game with MMORPG elements, world questing, leveling up and everything. It feels like a single player game. It really does. Meanwhile, Classic WoW, you feel like the world is vibrant, the world matters. You see a bunch of people in the open world as well. Whether you're leveling or at the max level, you just see people, and you feel like the interactions you make are more genuine and they matter more, and yeah, like you need connections to play this game, right? The social aspect actually matters.
For as much as it may be difficult to admit, just about every good and bad change made to World of Warcraft was done as a reaction to some kind of feedback. And feedback for a live service game is almost always fraught with negativity and a pushback against friction.
I've seen this as well, by the way. Blizzard has said this as well. The reason why retail is the way it is that it started out as Classic, and they have basically responded to feedback over time. The problem is the way they respond to feedback, in my opinion. It's like, if players say that leveling is too slow, we can put it this way. People in Classic said that leveling was too slow. Leveling in Classic right now takes you, like, not TBC, but Vanilla Classic. If you're fast at leveling, you probably spend 100 hours / played. That is if you're decent at leveling, by the way. Most people spend more time. In the Legion Remix, in retail, it took you 1.5 hours to level up. So we have gone from 100 hours to 1.5. It is effectively 70 times faster to level up right now in retail compared to Classic. People can say that leveling is slow, but you don't need to give us like a 70,000% experience boost. You can double the experience gain, and then it's still gonna be way faster. It's just about how you respond to the feedback. It's once again, people said leveling is slow because it took 100 hours, and now it takes 1. I don't think we need to be on one side or the other. Leveling doesn't need to be either 100 hours or 1 hour. It can be 10. It can be 15. It can be 20. I personally think 20 hours of leveling is great, because that is like, if you know life, that is 1 day of leveling. If you don't know life and play 1 hour a day, that is almost a month of leveling as well. I think 20 hours is a perfect place to be in retail, for example. And in Classic right now, if you're fast at leveling in TBC, you can probably level up in about 50 hours of played time in TBC.
A great MMO's player base should consist of people who can't always play, yet always want to play. I reject the notion that a game must respect your time by making you run dry of exciting content at unsatisfying increments. The Final Fantasy XIVification of MMO discourse has spoiled so much of this conversation for me. I hate the idea that a living world must contort itself to service people who don't or can't play it. We've seen what that has done to the genre. It hasn't done much at all. Which shouldn't be surprising. Why would anyone think that catering to people who don't play a genre reliant on having constant players somehow make it more successful? You should be theory crafting at work, sneaking texts to your friends about a cool build idea or chase item you just thought of, or telling stories of your adventures during a lunch break. You connect to a game that demands you consider it far past your playtime. I don't think I need to explain this to people who've been playing MMOs for decades. After all, we've all been kids running to school to recount our nights getting ganked in Stranglethorn Vale. Trials and tribulations, grinds and deaths and confusion make up the backbone of connection. Yet so many updates to WoW since its launch in 2004 were those of convenience, a filing down of friction masquerading as quality of life. Traversal became easier when all reagents were removed, when players could fly across the world at 3 times the speed of their ground mounts, when they could obtain ground mounts 20 levels earlier, when hundreds of quests were added and the overworld became an amalgam of questing hubs more so than a sporadic speckling of small adventures. As the game became effectively easier, simpler to begin and get into, less demanding of your time and resources, more open to just giving you what you want, the inverse of that intent began to manifest. For as easy as the game became to play, less people became invested in the game itself. To say what has seemingly become my catchphrase, friction isn't always a bad thing. If you have too much friction, nothing moves, you feel stuck. Too little, and nothing sticks to begin with. With each continuous removal of friction, it became harder and harder to stick to World of Warcraft. I don't think this is a WoW-specific issue though. This is an industry-wide burden, one that has only begun to be acknowledged. The fact that maybe, just maybe, we've gone too far. There is too little friction and games have ceased to provide an adequate reason to keep playing them. Removing all friction is an easy sell and a short-sighted solution. Worst of all, it becomes a bad habit, something I hope I can point out in an effort to help break. Speaking of bad habits though, smoking. It kills over 8 million people every
Okay, where's he going with this? Where are we going with this, bro?
year, and the great folks over at Fume are doing their best to replace a bad, unhealthy habit with a safe, fun one. They wanted to sponsor this video and sent me one of their flavored air devices, and while I don't smoke, my girlfriend used to. Now, she mainly vapes, so I figured she would be a good test subject to review this product. After all, a habit isn't just an addiction to nicotine, it's a fixation, it's an action, and frankly, at first, she wasn't too sure. But after a couple days, I started to notice her using it, whereas before, she'd be vaping. I asked her what changed, and to my surprise, the answer was simple. It just feels and tastes good. Fume comes with all kinds of different flavors to try, with none of the side effects of filling your lungs with unhealthy vapor or smoke. The device is weighty, satisfying to just use, and may genuinely help you transform a bad habit into a fun one. If you're interested, check Fume out with my promo code TheoryWiseOS, grab a journey pack and receive a free Fume top or a soft, replaceable mouthpiece that keeps your mouth busy when cravings hit. Head over to tryfume.com, that's TRYFUM.com, and find a link in the description of this video too, and remember to use the code TheoryWiseOS. Now, back to the video. There is a maybe unconscious realization that there is a true value in struggle and labor. Developers have become accustomed to creating systems and content without friction in mind, at least not the kind of friction that most RPG players have fallen in love with. Nowadays, if you want any level of challenge or consideration in the modern incarnation of World of Warcraft, you are only able to find it in upscaled 5-man dungeons, their Mythic Plus systems, and heroic or mythic raids. Other than that, the game is simply a frictionless marble of what can often be summarized as slop. Content that requires virtually no
I so much hate that word, by the way. I don't know why. I don't really have any reasoning for it, bro. It's just, it's gotten way too overused at this point, in my opinion. I don't know. I'm probably overreacting to it, but I'm just, so many of my friends as well just use it to describe things that you don't need to use it for. Just use any other word, man.
Effort to complete, no consideration, no demand. And when a game doesn't demand something from its player base, why should the players themselves care about the game? That was my experience with retail upon returning to it a few months ago. The classes were so detailed and beautifully designed, the world so evocative and immersive, the moment-to-moment gameplay so potentially exciting, yet just about every single piece of content didn't ask you to engage with the game itself. That's when I realized that my days of raiding cutting edge are far behind me. There's nothing exciting left for me. The game, frankly, isn't made for me anymore. I don't care about instanced player housing or collecting the 50th recolor of a mount.
You know, I personally think that's great, by the way. And the reason why I say that is because I think Classic and Retail should appeal to different audiences. If they both appeal to the same audience, then why? Why did we have Classic to begin with, if they're both going to appeal to the same? I think the people that play Classic should not want to play Retail. Or if they do, it should be for other reasons than the reasons why they're playing Classic. And vice versa with Retail. Retail players should either not want to play Classic, or if they do, it should be for to get something that Retail doesn't give them. And for now, that's kind of how it is. Like for me, for example, I really enjoy both, but for different reasons. There are things that I enjoy in Retail that I don't enjoy in Classic, and there are things that I enjoy in Classic that I don't enjoy in Retail. So, for example, when I want an open, vibrant world where, like, you're questing, the world feels a lot more vibrant and alive, and what you do matters, I play Classic. If I want to flip things, craft things, do professions, I play retail. If I want to have a challenge in raids or in dungeons, I'll play retail. To be fair, TBC heroic dungeons are kind of challenging as well, but a different kind of challenging, where it's like, oh, you need to have the right composition, and you have to CC because the mobs hit hard. In retail, it's more like, you don't move from this thing, you're dead. You interrupt, you don't interrupt, you're dead. It's a lot more like complicated mechanics, which I think is fun.
I don't care about boring, meaningless cosmetics given to you for just logging in once a month, and I certainly don't care about placing candles that I'll never see again in said instanced player-owned house. It just doesn't appeal. And the things that do, the class design mostly, has also been obliterated with the recent Midnight pre-patch. Adding a one-button rotation assist that played your favorite class for you wasn't enough for Blizzard's designers. Instead, now, they have opted to gut every single exciting part of a class's rotation, their depths, their synergies, and their flavor. Every class that I've tried to play since this pre-patch has been no more complex than a League of Legends character, without also acknowledging that the reason a League of Legends character doesn't have an action bar full of buttons is because the entire game is a competitive puzzle of micro and macro considerations, including but not limited to understanding the collective kits of well over 100 other characters. An MMO needs a level of depth to its classes because you're expected to spend hundreds if not thousands of hours playing them, not just competitively against other players, but casually too. Yet now, not only are classes uninteresting, there's a fundamental misunderstanding, at least in my eyes, of why people even play RPGs. Retail WoW has fallen into the trap of thinking that the encounter designs are the selling point of the game, that if only every player had enough time to move slightly to the left or slightly to the right, then they will be more engaged, more willing to play. But I disagree. I don't think that difficult encounters are key to anything. In fact, everyone already knows they aren't increasing difficulty in retail WoW, certainly not in the overworld, which hasn't demanded anything from anyone for years. The difficulty has always and will always stem from small group content and mythic raiding. The selling point of an RPG is always the role-playing. And no, I don't mean the Goldshire Inn type of role-playing, but rather the type you do every
Goldshire Inn roleplay, dude, let's go! I hate that. I hate it, but I love it as well. It's such a fun meme. Oh, I tried to go on retail once on a server called Moonglade on a weekend just to see if, because I didn't even know if Goldshire RP was a thing or a meme. So once upon a time, I just made a character on Moonglade. I think Moonglade was the biggest PvP server at this time. It's either Moonglade or Argent Dawn. But yeah, I made a character on Moonglade, went to Goldshire just to see what it was like, and it's not even just a meme, by the way. It's actual roleplay. Especially if you go there on the weekend, like, a lot of people just role-playing. And not just the type of roleplay you see here, by the way, it's just people sharing stories. They actually sit there and talk to each other, sharing their character backstories. I'm not a huge roleplay person, okay? I really am not a huge roleplay person. But it was really interesting to see that it's such a big community on some servers in retail.
time you play a unique class or specialization. The feeling of being a Frost Mage or an Unholy Death Knight or a Retribution Paladin. People inhabit their choice of class and spec. That's always been the most important and foundational choice made when creating your character. Everything that I just listed is a roleplay feature because it's brought to life by you. You are the conduit to that class. You are the one connecting with its class fantasy, its rotations and abilities and sound effects, things that have since, to me, kind of been lost. You may be wondering, what the hell does any of this even have to do with Classic WoW? Well, a lot, as it turns out. First of all, they're made by the same company, and the chances of having a developer overlap is pretty high, especially in upper management positions, people who direct the game. So the lessons learned in retail could very well trickle down to other versions of the game as well. Second, it showcases a lack of understanding. You see, classes in Classic WoW are also very simple, rotationally speaking, simpler than even the hollow shells that exist in retail today. So naturally, you'd think that the success
I mean, I'm playing like my main in TBC that I'm leveling a little bit as well right now, just to try to get level 70. I'm playing a Warlock, and yes, the rotations are easier. You have 2 buttons to press. And the main button alternates whether it's a AoE situation or single target. You can pretty much just have 3 buttons as a Warlock and you're fine. It's crazy, man.
of Classic would have been an inspiring feature for retail's class de-evolution, and you would be right. But once again, Blizzard is learning the wrong lessons. The simplicity of a class is rotational, as in the buttons you press during a raid or a dungeon. But class flavor, class fantasy, Classic WoW has that in spades. There are things classes can do, from mechanics to entire systems, that others cannot. Dire Maul tribute runs are emergent experiences only possible by hunters and maybe the odd warlock. The ability to engage in that level of emergence is thanks to class fantasy driven by niche abilities, things that have fundamentally not existed for years in retail WoW. In fact, when they do exist, they're often frowned upon or considered outliers, things to balance around, such as Warlock's portal utilities in retail WoW, making them a sought-after class in high-end raiding. These are things that are snuffed out and replaced by passive raid buffs that don't really do anything other than marginally increase your output. While conceptually it's not an issue to take from Classic its rotational simplicity and apply that same ideal to retail, that certainly hasn't happened. There has been zero class fantasy supplementing the shallow monotony of modern day class design, which is concerning. That sucks. Not only because retail WoW has become less fun, but because that is the kind of suffocating design that should never ever exist in a game's classic incarnation. Yet, we are seeing the same kind of pervasive perversions slowly weasel themselves into even the most faithful recreations of the past. So, let's talk about that.
You know, this is probably something, I'm gonna go against something that I've said myself before here, because like previously I kind of wish they would take some lessons from Classic into retail, but I'm gonna say, there's a lot of people playing retail that only play retail, and Holly herself has said that they see very little connection between the two games. So like that means there's very little people that play retail that also play Classic, and there's very little people who play Classic that also plays retail. I don't think adding more Classic mechanics to retail will make Classic players play retail anyway. I want them to just look at what works in retail and double down on what actually works in retail. Double down on Mythic Plus. Double down on making professions actually a little bit complicated and advanced, so there's like a level of depth to them. Make them easy to understand but hard to master. Double down on the raid difficulty and the way raids are in retail. Just double down on everything that actually works in retail and the reasons why the retail players actually play retail right now instead of Classic. And for Classic, give them Classic Plus. That way you have 2 different options for 2 different types of gamers. People that want a more little bit slow-paced gameplay with more community feeling, they can play Classic Plus. And people that want challenging gameplay with raids that take like a month to clear in progression, they can play retail, where progression raids are really, really rough, right? Different games or different versions of the game for different gamers, because gamers are different. I think that's the way Blizzard actually wins here, by appealing to different people. If they try to appeal to the same person for both retail and Classic, I think they're gonna hit this this point where they try to appeal to too many people and end up appealing to none. Ashes of Creation tried to do the same, I feel like. They started out as a massive like open world sandbox PvP-ish MMORPG, and they just opened the scope to be like, oh, we're going to have the best crafting, the best farming, the best PvE, the best PvP, the best open world, the best everything, housing, you name it. At some point, you need to be the best at one thing, instead of just being mediocre at everything.
The reason why many of my WoW videos can be negative is because I think Blizzard is in a negative spiral, and they only respond.
I don't think any of his videos are negative, by the way. It's just he's critiquing things, and when you critique things, you can sound negative to people that don't know that critiquing or making like comments like that usually comes from a place of wanting the game to be better than it currently is, which to me shows a passion and a love for the game itself, which I just feel like most people don't understand, right? When you're complaining about something as well, or critiquing a decision that the company is making, it can be just viewed as, oh, you're being negative, you hate the game, why don't you just quit? It always comes from a place of loving the game and not liking what's being done to the game, and you want it to be better. It's a place of love and passion.
On to negativity outright. Most companies do. The traumatized post-Shadowlands Blizzard, afraid of doing anything that could potentially upset a vocal minority, like, for example, creating game systems that ask more than a couple minutes of your time at any given moment, has strangled out the last inkling of the RPG and MMO out of their MMORPG. It doesn't really feel like either anymore, and that only becomes more clear when we juxtapose it to Classic and the eventual expansions which followed. Every new expansion, from the Burning Crusade to the War Within, added less and less and took away more and more. Not from a content standpoint, but from an esoteric RPG standpoint. On their own, they weren't bad, but collectively they paint a picture of a game stripping away its edges in favor of what exactly? I'm always baffled by these decisions because they so clearly haven't yielded much positive return. Like, after Blizzard's backpedaling and kowtowing to the remaining audience of Retail WoW post Shadowlands, it's not like the game has had a resurgence, right? For as much as some players really want you to think otherwise, both expansions haven't sold more, and in fact have sold far less than Shadowlands. And yeah, they aren't hemorrhaging as many players. That's likely due to most of those who grew apathetic to the game having already left and refusing to return with any new expansion release. The market has shifted. The demographic they are appealing to has as well. That's why my passion for retail has waned. I don't see Blizzard ever making it an interesting RPG again. I can see them maybe adding depth back to classes, making raids harder or something, but ultimately they won't create a game that I actually think about after I log off, a game that promotes genuine consideration, curiosity, and conversation outside of sweating over a keyboard during an intense Mythic Plus. All of this is to say, Classic has become a lighthouse to those like me, those who really do want an RPG, an MMO, set in one of the most beloved fantasy worlds ever created, one where items still meant something when equipping them, actually looked like something, it felt like you were wearing.
You know what I miss, by the way, and something that will likely never come back to retail due to how Mythic Plus is and the way that they're scaling up items? I miss when I actually remember the names of items in retail, and they actually mattered. Like, think about Thunder Fury in Classic WoW, think about Sulfurus in Classic WoW, think about Drake, think about DFT, and then DST, Dragonspine Trophy, Drake Fang Talisman. Just think about many of these items that you all know the names of, even Blade of Wizardry. I don't remember any names of anything in retail, except for the Arakoa Sackblood from the War Within. That is the only name that I remember from the entire expansion. I miss when you actually, like, you looked at an item and you remembered the name, and you knew this item had meaning. That's something we're never gonna have again, because, like, you do an M+ in Season 1, and you get an item. You do the same M+ in Season 2, you get the same item, but now it's scaled up. I wish we just got different items, with different stats every season, instead of the same item scaled up. To me, that would be way more interesting than the way they're doing it now.
An object of power, not just filtering between one cosmetic to another, when stats had immediate effects, when there was a specific named weapon that you wanted, not just an aggregate of identical secondary statistics. With Season of Discovery, Blizzard's attempt at a Classic Plus test via yet another seasonal incarnation of the game, I was left wanting. Disappointed. It didn't feel like Classic, and certainly didn't feel like Classic Plus. It felt like retail WoW in microcosm, with a fast patch cadence that incrementally increased the level cap, added new biz gear that devalued everything you've earned.
I feel like he's probably onto something here, but the leveling phases to me, they should have been way faster. They weren't fast enough, man. I never intended for us to stay at level 25, 40, and 50 for like 3 months per phase. To me, I think the leveling phases sounded great when they announced them at BlizzCon, because I thought, oh, so we're gonna be capped at level 25 for 2 weeks, maybe 3. Just to like give the people that are behind a chance to catch up. But no, it ended up being level 25 for like what, 10 weeks, 11 weeks or something, and you farmed best in slot week by week by week in phase 1. And phase 1 it was great because the entire season was fresh and everything was fresh. So phase 1 wasn't really bad length, but phase 2 and phase 3 you really felt it dragged out a lot. We didn't need to stay at level 40 and level 50 for that long, man. We really didn't. It was just dragging it out for the sake of dragging it out. Now, to me, I didn't really feel that whole retail aspect of it until the last phase. And Season of Discovery lovers will hate me for saying this, because the last phase to me reminded me a lot of retail. And I'll tell you why. It's a gearing. The way gearing works in retail is that when a new season, or in this case a new phase came out, all the old content's phase gear, all the other phases' content gear gets replaced instantly. And phase 8, that exact thing happened. Because of the way Sanctified work. Even warlocks and casters needed on healer gear, because all they cared about was Sanctified. So literally, everybody replaced just about every gear they had from the last phase with new gear in phase 8. That is retail gameplay. And retail gearing. I didn't like that at all. Especially when it's so good in the next phase, aka phase 8, that casters need on healer gear because of the Sanctified. That is trash.
Before, fast experience rates and boosts, more complex rotations while filing down class fantasy, and worst of all, virtually no consideration for the world itself. In other words, it felt like 8 mini expansions stuffed into a season. Adding new instanced content is fine and dandy, but the most quintessential element of classic WoW, one that everyone experiences, is the leveling. Slapping some abilities from TBC or Wrath of the Lich King onto a classic WoW specialization is one thing, but finding novel ways of innovating such a beloved leveling experience is another entirely, a thing Blizzard had failed to do. The incursions were a disaster, and all that came about after the fact was an expedited, simplified version of what existed before. But you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at how cataclysmic the player-based drop-off of Season of Discovery was. I doubt that replicating anything there would yield better returns for a real Classic Plus. I won't get into what Classic Plus needs to be, mainly because I already have in multiple different videos. Instead, I want to relay some things it can't be or can't do. After all, as a player, I am far better at explaining an issue than I am designing a solution. That's why game designers exist. I've said this before, but if game design was as easy as just giving players what they say they want, then everyone would be a game designer. It'd be very easy. The difficulty stems from reading between the lines, diagnosing an apt solution to something that may very well be a problem. When Blizzard heard players were beginning to feel tired of navigating the enormous world, they implemented faster methods of traversal. Flying mounts. That was a response to player feedback. When players stopped getting connected to the overworld thanks to how small it all felt, how easy it became to navigate, Blizzard responded to that by removing flying mounts and making them an earned achievement later on in any given expansion. Both were responses, yet neither were apparently the correct decision. On the topic of removing friction as a response to player feedback, we can look toward my favorite class in Classic WoW, and my least favorite in retail, the Hunter. In Classic, a Hunter felt like a jack of all trades, a utility mastermind adept at commanding a pet, setting traps, kiting dangerous creatures, and finding fascinating solutions to problems that would otherwise be bulldozed by a group of players. On its surface, it was a simple class. In a raid, it was a simple class, as they all are. You press the auto attack button, you send your pet in, and you try your best not to clip your auto attacks with your aimed shot. Yet, Elsewhere, the depth, the flavor, began to rear up. Because rotations were simple, yet the utilities had niche use cases, most of your playtime leveling up had you parse those situations. An enemy is chasing you, place down a trap and freeze them, or perhaps you think you can take them out, slow them down with dazing shot and sneak in a couple attacks here and there. Utilize your pet's taunt to gain some distance. The lengthy leveling process acted like a prolonged tutorial that would put you in a unique situation and force your hand, make you figure it out. So by the time you hit max, you not only knew how to stand around and auto attack, but do a lot more. Consider your entire kit, even if that consideration isn't an aspect of your DPS rotation. That's the difference between a classic WoW class and one in retail. In the latter, most of the depth, when that existed, came from your understanding of your cooldowns, buffs, debuffs, and so on. The utilities were relatively simple by comparison. The lack of supporting fantasy was supplemented by deep, rewarding rotations. Meanwhile, in Classic, the lack of deep rotations made room for emergent gameplay. In Classic WoW, you had the existing hunter fantasies, someone donning a bow and arrow or crossbow or gun, someone controlling a pet, and someone with a mastery over traps. Each facet involved distinct consideration and management. To use your weapon, you needed ammo, something you purchase and stock up on through a vendor. You also must consider the speed at which that weapon shoots. Doing this fundamentally changes the pace of your kiting, of your simple yet impactful rotation. To control your pet, you do so granularly. You can individually use your pet's abilities, you can call it back, you can sick it on a target. These are all mandatory things to learn if you are engaging in the depth of the class for things like tribute runs. To have a mastery of your abilities, you must understand the use cases which they excel in. You may drop an explosive trap in the center of a pack of mobs knowing that it's going to do a bunch of damage, but chances are the damage will put them right on you. You will get aggro and die instantly. Instead, what if you slow them and kite them? What if you do place that explosive trap but make sure you feign death before they get their hits off on you? All things that are once again incentivized via the emergent systems at play. Over time, all of that was removed. Not changed, just removed. Blizzard felt like ammo was too annoying, so they removed it. The benefit was that now you can't run out of ammo due to your forgetfulness. Now you don't ever have to think about managing any kind of resource. This held even more true when they removed the pet happiness.
To me, this is so weird, by the way, to be shooting arrows but never spending arrows, but also in retail I feel like it makes sense. It's one of those annoyances that was really cool in Classic, but at some point it just became annoying to be a warrior hunter and having half your bag space be arrows only. So I get it, on like a gameplay level I guess, but just the way it feels, it's weird that you're just conjuring magic arrows. It made sense in TBC, when you get the bow that actually conjures magic arrows, because then you have a magic bow that just shoots magic arrows. But yeah, when you have it all the time, I think it would make even more sense if they always had, like, every expansion had a magic bow, so every hunter would use arrows while grinding for that bow. And when they get the magic bow, now they don't need arrows anymore. That would also add like a grind that felt meaningful for the hunters as well. Have it be a drop from a raid or from a M+ dungeon or something, or even just have it be locked behind a hunter questline to make it make sense.
System. You no longer needed to feed your pet to keep it happy, which increased its damage and prevented it from running away. The benefit, of course, is that now you don't have to carry food in your inventory.
Yeah.
The positives of these changes are obvious.
That is once again what he talked about earlier in the video, the retail aspect of removing friction, right? Having half your bag filled up by arrows is a sort of friction. Having the other half be filled of food is a sort of friction. Less bag space is a level of friction. So they are once again removing levels of friction here.
The detriments may not be. Suddenly, you're not thinking about the game nearly as much. You're not considering what your class is at all. In an effort to alleviate what was effectively a minor burden, they ended up sacrificing a major part of the class fantasy. The result was Blizzard supplementing that loss with a complex rotation, or at least a more complex one. That's always been the trend. Blizzard has amazing class designers on their team who are able to come up with exciting rotations, so when they end up destroying a class's fantasy, they also end up improving its moment-to-moment gameplay. That's been the push and pull of every expansion. But it's also a delicate balance. Because let's just say you remove that supplementary feature, the complex rotation, you end up being left with nothing. A facsimile of a hunter, something that may look one way, but not feature any discernible traits mechanically. That's where it is today. You don't control your pet, it's a passive feature that just kind of exists with your rotation. You don't manage your ammo because it doesn't exist. You don't bond with your pet because you have no system that allows you to do so. What you're really doing is playing any ranged DPS, a mage, a warlock, an elemental shaman, just with a bow and arrow coat of paint. Your traps are nothing, really. Any kind of CC, a reskinned polymorph. Your ability to kite is unnecessary because there is nothing challenging in the overworld that would demand you learn to do so. And the leveling experience is so filed down and non-existent that you may as well coast through it half asleep in a couple hours.
This is true, by the way. This is true, by the way. But to be fair, once you play Classic enough as well, Classic is the same way. Not in the couple of hours part, but like for me right now, questing is never hard. It can be, if you want it to be, by going for the elite quests and group quests, sure. But other than that, questing is never hard. Leveling is never challenging at all, even on hardcore. I have 5 level 60s on hardcore. I've died once, and that was when I first started hardcore, and I had no idea about like challenges in the world. I died once.
Most damning of all, Blizzard has yet to showcase any understanding of this. Just look at all these changes that they're making, not just to retail, but to Classic. Everything is done in an effort to make things have less friction. To be clear, I don't expect them to change how retail functions. As I mentioned before, retail is a shallow ARPG with challenging combat encounters in the top end. In Classic, however, that's where considering these features would not only be important, but mandatory. I have yet to see anyone consider them, though. In fact, down the line, I could see hunters becoming the same kind of thing they are in retail. No ammo, no management, no consideration. The prevailing trend of Classic WoW and the discourse surrounding Classic Plus has been identical to that of retail. It's such an antithesis to the kind of differences seen between old school RuneScape and its sister modern game, RuneScape 3. Every feature imagined by the collective player base of Classic is as narrow, shallow, and lacking in forethought as anything that exists in the modern game. The worst part of all of these cool ideas for Classic Plus is that all of them could just be added to retail. I think we can probably all see the problem with that. I've seen people ask for player housing, I've seen players ask for transmog in Classic WoW.
To be fair though, player housing was a vanilla WoW feature that was scrapped before launch, so I can see why people ask for that one. It is just really important to remember that in this case, I don't think they're asking for the retail housing. They're asking for classic player housing in like the vanilla WoW spirit. Because once again, if we're talking about Classic Plus and fulfilling the original vision of Classic, plus maybe adding more content, vanilla, like, housing was on that aspect for vanilla WoW. Was thrown out.
I've seen people ask for homogeneity in class design, filing down the unique elements in favor of Blizzard's favorite justification for obliterating fantasy, roleplay, creativity, and personality. Balance. Everything can be justified under the guise of balance. Little Timmy wants to play a boomkin and is upset that they aren't competing with the Fury Warrior on the DPS meters. Instead of considering further utility that makes a boomkin worth bringing, the easy solution is just applying the benefit of a Fury Warrior to the boomkin, homogenizing the output, not differentiating the class fantasy. Classic WoW wasn't balanced, and that was in some ways to its detriment. The solution isn't to give everyone the ability to do a Dire Maul tribute run, but rather to find equally exciting emergent discovery for every class. Unfortunately, designing content with emergence in mind isn't Blizzard's strong suit. Stifling emergence is. Players discovered a novel way to reflect damage back to a boss, Beatrix, in the final raid of the Season of Discovery. She cast the Unwavering Blade ability at the tank, dealing around 50% of their health. However, if the tank had imbibed the Sheen of Zanza elixir, which had a small chance of reflecting a spellcast and was guaranteed to reflect the first offensive spellcast against them, they would reflect the entire ability back at her, instead dealing that large chunk of health to her instead. This promoted and rewarded forward thinking, ingenuity, consideration for mechanics that exist outside of the raid as much as those that exist within. An elixir obtained elsewhere had gotten more value, which in turn created value in the content it stemmed from. Instead of funneling people down into a narrow endgame, it broadened it ever so slightly.
Yeah.
Now, dealing this amount of damage to the boss is certainly a bit much. Nerfing it would make sense. Hell, even
these are the kind of things you can't really have in retail, because some players gonna find a way to break this in retail, where the race to world first is a much bigger aspect than it is in Classic, for example. But I loved this right here in Classic, I really did. It was really fun that you had to go out of your way to get an item that would really help you out later in a different aspect of the game.
adding a bit of risk reward.
Another thing was kind of the, what's it called? What's it called again? Elluin's Light, or Light of Elluin? Light of Elluin for hardcore. An item that seemingly had no value in Classic until hardcore came out. It's an item that would basically function as a paladin bubble for anyone who's not a paladin. So now if you're playing hardcore, for example, with 1 life, there's one item out there for the Alliance, giving anyone the ability to bubble like a paladin. Being a warlock or a mage or a hunter, you can bubble like a paladin. To me, that is really cool.
To it, maybe even requiring the tank to imbibe the elixir at the perfect time before the spell lands would be the appropriate solution. But of course, Blizzard just removed it. It wasn't intended, and therefore, it was wrong. Honestly, I'm not sure what else to say. It's just depressing. There's no creativity here. Instead of embracing player ingenuity, they strangled it again and again. And the only emergence that continues to exist in Classic is that which the modern Blizzard didn't create. Things like Dire Maul tribute runs weren't quote-unquote modern content like this Season of Discovery raid, and therefore they rather not poke the bear, although I genuinely believe they likely had internal conversations over doing so. If we are to believe that the Season of Discovery was a testing ground for Classic Plus, then their first properly new raid is sadly a perfect demonstration of the difference between Jagex's philosophy and Blizzard's. We can draw a parallel: the release of Araxor, a spider boss in old school RuneScape. It launched in 2024 and was received rather well, featuring a large spider that envenoms you, spawns colored spiders with individual mechanics that you can sometimes turn on the boss itself, such as this exploding spider that you can detonate near the boss for massive damage, and finally an enrage phase that caused the boss to attack in quick succession, all the while placing down puddles of venom in a line where you last stood. Forward-thinking players discovered that by stepping underneath the boss's hitbox during this attack made the boss strike itself, an unintended emergent discovery during the...
There we go, dude. These are the kind of things that I really like, man. It's just such a small thing that probably took people years to find out. You know? It's such a small thing. Probably took a long time to find out, though. Same with the logout skips in WoW as well. You can log out on a rock on a cave and get teleported to a graveyard, for example, right? Who found that out and when? Because that's probably been here in Classic WoW forever, and it probably took 10-15 years before anybody ever found out that logout skipping was a thing. Just logging out on a rock in a cave and get teleported to a graveyard outside the cave, you know? Playing the game very differently now and just discovering things naturally over time.
First week's learning period. It was riskier to do, as mistiming this step under caused you to take a ton of damage, yet yielded substantially faster kills. The damage that the boss would do to itself was deemed too much by Jagex, much like it was on Beatrix in the Scarlet Enclave. Yet instead of just removing this interaction and flattening the skill ceiling of the game, they embraced it, nerfed the output, but retained the mechanic. It's a risk with a better balanced reward. The same could have been done with Beatrix. If you were to prepare ahead of time and reflect the spell, maybe it wouldn't have dealt a huge chunk of her health, but it could have been a reasonably small portion as a reward for your ingenuity and forward thinking. It adds depth and also promotes future ingenuity. The benefit here is that Jagex already had years of experience designing around emergent player behavior. Hell, most of old school RuneScape is one giant emergent player action, from the way optimal skilling methods are done to the way most of the boss fights have at least one unintended mechanic that both players and designers embraced. It's all player forward, not just by catering to them or giving them what they complain about, but by incentivizing creativity in the
You know, from a classic WoW player like myself and having seen other streamers from classic WoW play old school RuneScape, it would be very interesting if all of those content creators sat down together in a video format or on a stream and asked about what things or mindsets, like what actual objective things would we want to have from old school RuneScape in Classic Plus, and what kind of mindsets from old school RuneScape do you want to have in Classic Plus. I think the voting system they have in old school RuneScape, for example, is really, really great, where it gives the players the power to talk about what they want to see in the game, and it gives just a good way to give feedback for everybody who plays the game. And Blizzard could do something similar through an in-game voting system that I think is happening, by the way, for Classic Plus. I mean, they pretty much hinted towards it in the State of Azeroth stream as well, or the State of Azeroth, what's it called again? Announcement, right? Or can I even call it an announcement? It's an announcement of an announcement, but still, they talked about and hinted towards in-game voting for players. I think that's really cool. I like the vertical, or not vertical, the horizontal progression, but I've heard that word being thrown around so many times. But yeah, I would just love to hear from people who've gone from Classic WoW to old school RuneScape, like what made them love old school RuneScape, and try to really dissect what made them love the game so much. And stick to it. Like, many of these WoW creators are still playing old school RuneScape. Some people just go back and forth now. Some people have fully abandoned classic WoW for old school RuneScape, and some people are back from old school RuneScape to WoW as well. It just depends on the player, I think. I feel like more casual classic WoW players have stuck to old school RuneScape, and more hardcore classic WoW players, they came back. Like Ampi, for example, right? He came to classic WoW. He came back to classic WoW really fast. Because I believe he's just like more focus on the end game grind, right? And better at the game.
their approach, making both players and developers think outside of the box, not just kick each other back into it. Ultimately, it's up to the players to promote longevity and to teach Blizzard how to embrace the best parts of the game that they themselves created, albeit a long time ago with an entirely different group of people. What's concerning to me
This right there, by the way, is why Classic Plus will never be what everybody wants it to be, because Classic WoW is not being made by the same developers now that it was back in the day. I think nobody, and I have to say I think here, I have no idea, by the way, I think nobody on the old Vanilla WoW team is still at Blizzard. Or at least on the Classic WoW dev team. I don't think there's anybody. There might be some people from like Wrath or Cataclysm, but there's nobody from Vanilla WoW. So it's really hard to make Classic WoW or Classic Plus right now in the Vanilla WoW spirit.
Is how many players have begun to promote and accept some of the worst features of this modern-day Blizzard-led complacency. After all, a player base is as much curated by the developers as vice versa. If you breed a player base that just wants a short-term seasonal MMO, then that's all they'll ever demand and expect. That's why seeing Blizzard relaunch TBC again with another level boost again is disheartening again.
Yeah.
Yet what is most upsetting isn't Blizzard charging full AAA game price for a level skip to content they made over 20 years ago, but rather how accepting, borderline supportive.
I've said this before, we as players are being conditioned into being more okay to pay more money for more things in the game. We are. They are just slowly drip feeding us with payment stuff that we are accepting, and over time we become more and more accepting and even wanting. I would say, like when the boost first came out from Classic WoW to TBC back in 2021, a lot of people weren't even accepting of the boost. Maybe like 30% were accepting, and 70% were not even accepting of the boost. When it came out now, 5 years later for TBC anniversary, 50% of people were accepting of the boost. The other 50% was hoping for it. They are actively celebrating it.
players are of this. It has been extremely sad to see all comments touting how excited players are to skip through the game. For those unaware, WoW's second expansion
I also feel like these boosts, by the way, just further promotes this whole aspect of, oh, the game starts at max level, which when Classic WoW came out, that was a retail mindset, by the way. When people asked what the difference was in Classic versus retail back in the day, people said that in Classic, the game starts at level 1. The world feels alive and you actually have to do stuff. Meanwhile, in retail, it feels like everything you do until max level doesn't even matter. And here we are, 6 years later. Classic feels the exact same now. It feels like the game starts at max level and people do anything and everything they can to skip the leveling aspect.
is launching for a third time, and much like its first relaunch, it is doing so with a portal pass that is charging $60 for a level boost that puts players at the appropriate level to access this expansion's leveling content, which is to say level 58. As we've determined before, leveling and the level experience is arguably the most essential part of Classic WoW, and while this boost certainly saves time by skipping content, we are left wondering if skipping content in an MMO through microtransactions is good. Is that a positive element? The answer is of course no. The only argument for the existence of this level boost is from a demographic of people who haven't leveled in the year prior and want to quickly skip past the short leveling grind to re-experience TBC content for a couple weeks. Much like how we discussed the removal of friction, how by reducing it leads to a more palatable and accessible experience, we must now acknowledge the same thing here. And like then, also acknowledge the downsides of doing just that. If removing every single aspect of granular class fantasy from the Hunter was bad, why would killing the overworld prior to being filtered into a tiny new continent be good? The argument of, well, I just don't have time to level up a character, I just want to play with my friends, is all well and good, but like, then don't play the longest genre in the world. Surely there are thousands upon thousands of games out there that you can play with your friends without destroying the one long-term genre left by riving its world of a player base that's actually engaging in it. Similarly, the already existing pressure on players to quickly chew through content thanks to the fast-paced, seasonal, linear, and vertical progression nature of WoW is made doubly bad now that a whole host of players can skip the largest portion of the leveling experience. Not only that, you also have players who don't engage in the level tutorializing that teaches players how to play, instead shoving them into the late levels with dozens of new abilities they don't understand and creating a steeper barrier to entry, more quitting points. But even if
Also, yeah, dude, Arcane, what you said, by the way, players have less free time and gaming is different. I agree, but I still feel like the boost pushes the agenda of the game starts at max level. Because whether you have 1 hour to play, or if you have 1 hour a day to play, or 10 hours per day to play, it doesn't change the fact that if you buy the boosts, you're skipping past 58 levels, you're skipping past the part of the game, and I feel like if you have 1 hour a day to play the game, just abandon the whole I have to be level 70 mindset and I have to do raid mindset, enjoy the game for what it is, and level up slowly over time. If you have 1 hour a day to play, every level will feel so impactful to you. The achievements from going from level 1 to level 10 will feel so great. Going from level 10 to level 20 will feel so great as well. And if you played since Anniversary, for example, when they came out 1.5 years ago, if you had 1 hour a day to play, that means that by now you have raked up 500 hours of gameplay in Anniversary. In that time, you could have been leveling up 5 characters to level 60. Just want to point that out, by playing the game 1 hour per day. On average, if you spend 100 hours leveling, which is what most people spend in Classic WoW, without rested experience by the way, so when you spend a year leveling, you have rested experience all the way, so definitely 100 hours. In that case, if you play 15 minutes per day, you would be level 60 before TBC came out. 15 minutes per day of gameplay. I think most people have 15 minutes per day to play the game, and if they don't, should they really play WoW? If they only have 15 minutes per day? I'm just asking.
that weren't true, and the argument was simply, I don't want to have to re-level again for a third time, I've already done that, I just want to play TBC, okay. You've already done all of this, it's a re-release of an expansion. If you can't even invest the modicum amount of time needed to level up a single character in the year of time leading up to the Burning Crusade, then why should the game reliant on persistent players bend over backwards to facilitate your engagement? What benefit?
That right there is my stance as well, by the way. Sure, it's great for that one person or those people who's like, oh, dude, I have 10,000 kids, I have 5 wives and 77 jobs, and I work 34 hours per day. And I sleep 1 hour per day because I work so much. And I can play the game for 10 seconds per day, in which case I log on, I kill one mob, and then I log out. Why should the game facilitate itself for you? At some point, the game is the game, and you love it for a reason. I feel like the boost does so much damage. It's great for Blizzard's pocket. I think it's really bad for the game itself, though.
Benefit other than extremely short-term, solipsistic, and masturbatory catching up does that even have? The world feels emptier, the player base less tutorialized, and the characters created far less meaningful. The reason people like me are anti-boost is because boosts shorten the lifespan of an MMO. More people may play at first, but they're playing for far less time. The world dies faster, and that just isn't worth it. Considering this boost is a recreation of one released half a decade ago now, I'm inclined to think that the eventual creation of Classic Plus will likely have the same rotten perspectives that have viciously deteriorated the Classic experience today. But what do I know? I've only semi-predicted the failures of 2 MMOs so far. What's another one? Jokes aside, somehow, shockingly, players from 2007 who were working.
I will say, by the way, when Classic Plus comes out, it's gonna be really, really popular, and it's gonna be really popular for a while. That being said, I believe boosts are coming out for Classic Plus, because Blizzard has now seen, through Classic WoW, and now an anniversary, that people are willing to buy boosts, and right now an anniversary, they're even happy about the boost as well, and they've been begging for the boost, and they're even begging for WoW tokens. So Blizzard pays attention here, by the way, to what you are doing. Actions speak louder than words, and when you buy the boost, it signals to Blizzard that, well, they want this. This is what they're doing. They've even said this, by the way. It's not always about listening to feedback. It's about seeing what people are doing in the game and how their actions respond to feedback as well, or respond to what they put in. Based on that, the boost is 100% coming to Classic Plus, but mark my words, it will not be there for the first year, but between 1 and 2 years from Classic Plus being launched, boosts will be there, and within 1 year of the boost, the WoW token will also be there. When that happens, Solheim was right.
At the game, took longer to level, managed to gear up characters and progress through the world without paying $60 for a level boost. Yet today, with all the knowledge in the world, all the add-ons, all the level guides, all the supplementary information, players have, much like Blizzard, become avoidant of even the most minor amount of friction. If I am to motion to a single reason why old school RuneScape is so successful, why it has doubled its player base over the past 2 years, why it has more concurrent players during peak hours than WoW Classic does weekly, users logging raids between all versions combined, and why I am truly concerned for Classic Plus, it's because the player base is fundamentally different. OSRS players aren't just there to make things faster, easier, and dumbed down. They aren't eager to devalue existing content, sometimes even to the detriment of the game. They won't blithely accept level boosts, and they certainly won't support endless cosmetic overrides, diluting the item pool of the game. But that's not because they're smarter or cooler, it's because they were made to be that way thanks to the design of the game. For all of the issues that both player bases have, and there are issues, one thing that I can confidently say about the OSRS player base that I can't about the WoW player base is that they are properly concerned and cautious about the game's future. Yes, short-term boosts may help you do the content you really want to do faster, much like how selling gear in the cash shop would similarly allow that to happen, yet both of these things are obviously bad, right? Short-term gain isn't always an abject benefit, and no amount of cope about the expansion being old to justify these shitty, greedy, and malicious business practices that pander to players who barely even play the game are creating an environment for Classic Plus to succeed. These studios aren't just their developers, they're businesses too. If a business can get away with selling water to a fish, then they will. Imagine a world where Classic Plus launches with a properly elongated leveling experience, where you aren't just able to rush through dozens of hours of content with level guides thanks to the addition of brand new bespoke zones, quests, and a longer overall time to reach max level. I genuinely think a lot of current Classic players wouldn't enjoy that, thanks to their existing expectations, of course, and Blizzard's insistence to pander to those expectations. The endgame is the only goal in the game, and the endgame for WoW is fucking boring. I can't imagine a more pathetic existence for Classic Plus than being a raid log simulator for years and years until it eventually peters out and its dev support runs dry. Players need to ask for more because Blizzard has time and time again demonstrated their inability to over-deliver. Not only that, but players need to be more creative with what they're asking for as well. If all you want from Classic Plus are just features from other expansions, then you have lost the plot before the story even began. Thankfully,
there's no way OSRS has more players than Classic WoW or than WoW. Oh, I think you misunderstood what he said, Arcane. I'm not gonna go back in the video and check it. I'll give you the link after we have watched it right now, so you can go back and double check stuff for yourself. But I think what he said was that old school RuneScape had a bigger peak number than the weekly raid logs in Classic WoW. Which means that right now we have 100,000 people logging their raids in Classic WoW, and not everybody raids, right? There's a bunch of people playing hardcore Classic WoW that never raid ever. On Anniversary, the raids haven't even launched yet, right? We don't know how many people play Classic WoW. All we have is the raid numbers, the raid log numbers. So what he said was that there's more people playing old school RuneScape during the peak hours, which is the, peak hour, than it is in Classic WoW on the raid logging side at the moment.
It's not all doom and gloom. WoW Classic content creator and streamer Jordy has created a website that seeks to poll existing and potential WoW players about Classic Plus, trying to see what the community wants and hopefully fostering conversations about the long-term health of the game, coagulating the stratified opinions into a single aggregate, an attempt to create something WoW desperately needs: a vision. I highly recommend visiting this website found by clicking the link in the description. Let your voice be heard.
The Classic Plus project, boys, let's go! This is so good, by the way. They even have some really good cinematics in there as well. Really worth checking out. I think he's providing a link to it in this video. I'm going to be giving you guys a link to this video, so you can click my link to get to this video, then click the link to get to this project. There we go.
I may not like every opinion shared about Classic WoW, maybe that's just me. Even if Classic Plus doesn't end up being the MMO I want it to be, filled to the brim with the kind of cosmetic slop and endless endgame treadmills that retail WoW is, I still hope for its success. There's no world where I'd rather be right about my concerns than one with another successful MMO giving people thousands of hours of enjoyment. As my prior Classic Plus video stated, I don't think Blizzard is capable of making Classic Plus into an old school RuneScape type MMO. I don't think WoW is deep enough, long-term enough, and intelligently horizontal enough to facilitate that kind of success. Nor do
I actually think it is. Classic Plus has the ability here to break the genre. It can pull in so many people who want something new and fresh in MMORPGs, but who don't just want to replay WoW again. Because retail has fallen out of taste for a lot of people. They want something more old school, but they don't just want to have the nostalgia glasses and play Classic WoW 24/7. Classic Plus has insane potential, if done correctly.
I think WoW players would even like having a grindier long-term MMO like old school RuneScape. But
I think we would, especially for Classic Plus. I don't think retail players would, but Classic Plus, I think people would love that. A super grindy game.
I do think there's an area somewhere in between. Sadly, right now it feels as though Blizzard is too blasé about applying their design philosophies from retail WoW to a game that simply does not function like retail WoW, and nor should it. Blizzard may never be as communicative and player-forward as Jagex, but I do think they're listening, even if it's through the filter of like 17 different lawyers and HR departments. After all, Jagex also had their redemption. They too didn't fully understand RuneScape back when they almost destroyed it in 2012. It took them hitting their lowest lows to now have just reached their highest highs. Jagex fomented their redemption, while Blizzard was creating cosmetics. It's time we rein them in and put the best—
True, dude. Oh, dude. But Blizzard, once again, they are responding to feedback here, and not feedback verbal, but based on players, right? Why should Blizzard spend a year of development and millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars on an expansion or a game when they can make a mount in retail, give it a mailbox and an auction house, and print probably $50 million? Or however many millions they made. I'm telling you right now, they made a lot. They sold you a $90 mount and you bought it. I did as well. I bought that shit. So then it's like, they look at that and now they learn. They learn that they can just print free money from cosmetics. And if they add some sort of like usability as well to the cosmetics, and now we're talking. And now we're printing.
Foot forward by acknowledging what about Classic is successful. Don't just think about what you want to see, think about what you first fell in love with. What about Classic felt great? Not even in 2004 or 2006, but like 2019. What about Vanilla felt transportational? And please don't think about how much time you have to play and then curate your decisions based on how much time you think you can invest in the game. That simply is not creating the best MMO. And more importantly, if the game is good enough, I promise you, you will find time. Don't just talk about how much you want to see a new raid. Think about your first moments stepping into the expansive world of Azeroth, whichever starting zone it may have been in, the emotions you felt, and what drove you to continue playing. Certainly the tediousness of hunter ammo, the frustration of needing to level again, the inability to override your gear with random cosmetic junk, the fear of missing out on the newest expansion weren't enough to make you quit. In fact, I think those supposed limitations ended up becoming benefits, points of motivation, a driving force to set goals and do whatever you can with whatever time you had to achieve them. That's what's missing, and that's what needs to be found.
There we go, boys. That was the video, and like I said at the start, that was a longer one as well. It's been 1 hour and 17 minutes of me just watching this and talking about it, man. But honestly, great video. I like all the videos that he's making, by the way. They're really good, they're really thought out. Sometimes he uses kind of complicated words, or like too complicated for me, because I'm not like native English speaker, but yeah. Really good video, man. Oh my days. Really thought out as well. And just probably 50 minutes of insane content there. I can't wait to see, though, what Classic Plus ends up being. Like I said, I think Classic Plus has insane potential if done right. The only question is, can Blizzard do it right? And not only can they, number two, will they? Because I believe they can, by the way. The question is, will they? Do they have the incentive to do it right? Because by doing it right, the player base might be more happy, but by adding in microtransactions, selling you cosmetics, adding player housing and then selling you player housing stuff, or adding level boosts, they make more money. And at the end of the day, they are a company, they want to make money, and we are customers. We'll have to wait and see. I have huge faith. I don't want to have any expectations, but I want to have faith, if that makes sense. I have faith and I have hope, but I have no expectations. That's usually how I try to enter things, and especially like any new WoW expansion as well. I always want to have faith, I want to have hope, but I never have any expectations. So we'll see. what Classic Plus ends up being. I'm fully expecting, by the way, Classic Plus to come out this year, so 2026. I'm calling October or November release. Some people think that's way too soon. I don't think so. Think about Season of Discovery and how quickly they made the Season of Discovery as well, for example. Now they have probably tripled their team. I don't know, I don't have any insider info, by the way, but I think they have doubled or tripled their team compared to Season of Discovery. They've already been cooking for a year, they have another half a year until October, so 1.5 years of cooking on a triple size team of Season of Discovery. Think about that. It's insane, dude. I can't wait just to see what it's like as well. How many retail-ish features there are, how much of Classic WoW is left, or how much of the Classic WoW identity is still in the game. Speaking of Classic WoW identity, by the way, I'm doing some spell cleaving right here. Actually, that was my bank. Okay, I guess I'll show you the spell cleaving later, okay? Either way,